All right, fam. This is a fun one. We're going to teach you everything you need to know about the farming meta, about the farm meta in this game. It is such a big deal. It is so massive. And I'm not the expert in it. But guess what? As much stuff as I know about other things, if I don't know about this, I'm going to grab the best person I can find. And we got a good one. And her name is Only Farmer. She's got a great stream. She's got her channel. I'll have her channel link in the description. She's a great fighter and got a great main she plays. But she is one of the best farming players I've ever seen. And I don't mean just to like go farm and collect RSS. I mean like filling structures, you know, putting out punching bags for buffing marches, for doing all the things that she does. It's incredible. And so with that, we're going to talk to her and go through the questions and how this stuff works. So here she is, and I explained a lot about her. And so we welcome in our good friend who we fought with before, we've known for a while and played in the game, Only Farmer. How you doing?
I am doing good. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so you know how all the stream stuff works and all the video stuff works. And you know, I've always been a big supporter of your channel. You put out great stuff. You always stream KVK fights. You fight with your main, and it's great. And it's a lot of fun to get you on because you understand what I'm trying to do and how this is trying to work.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so I kind of gave a good introduction of who you are and how this stuff works. And so with that, we're going to talk about the farm meta, how this thing plays out, how important it is for kingdoms, how important it is for players who want to be relevant, who, you know, maybe you're a mid spender, even high spenders have crazy farms that they play on. But whatever level of spending you are in the game, or whatever level of attention you put into the game, you know, Farmer, there's a lot of things we can teach players to where they become relevant for their kingdom, because it's not just your main account, it's everything you bring with your farms. Am I right?
I agree, because like farm accounts can help like a kingdom so much, right? From just filling structures and rallies, for example, right? Because like we want to kill off the farm troops before we kill off our main account troops. So they're always very, very important to have, in my opinion.
Okay, so let's get right into it. Okay, first question. How long have you played, and what kingdom are you playing in now?
Okay, so let's see. I guess the good way to see how long I played is if I check the VIP here. So it says 1,500 days. So it's been a little while.
Okay.
And then right now I'm currently in Kingdom 2885, where we are in KVK. So this is just our zone 7 map here.
So I think our boy Dom is the king there, right? Is this where you got your farms and your main and everything, and you guys are in KVK now?
Yes, that's correct. I have some of my farms here. Some of my farms I left behind. I like some of them.
So, and when we talked about this, you know, there are so many different aspects to farms and how many and all that stuff. We'll get into some of those questions. But you got your farms here, and you got some of your really, really good ones. And, you know, it's funny because I always tell people, you know, whenever I got on your stream or you ever come into my stream and say hi, I always tell people Only Farmer might have been the hardest working player I've ever seen. Like, she's filling structures, she's holding R5 of shell alliances, she's putting out punching bags, and then, oh, by the way, she's running her main out there with 5 marches and trying to get kill points. I mean, it's incredible, but you're able to do so many different things with farms, and so there's more aspects than just going to gather resources in the off season, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like I try to do the best as I can with all my accounts, right? So whether it's like helping to build flags, helping to build garrisons, you know, getting the door, punching bag, everything, whatever. I don't know why. Like I just tend to do the best I can wherever I am. So I guess it's just natural for me to have like a whole bunch of farm accounts. That's, you know, to do what's needed in a kingdom.
And it helps you in leadership, obviously, because if you are holding R5 of other shells, or if you need to go put an account over in a shell and get R4 to grab the door or be able to do different things, it definitely helps, right?
100%, yes, yeah.
Okay, so with that being said, let me do my thing here and kind of put this all in together. Okay, a couple of questions here we want to get kind of answered, and I think this is a good way to kind of understand this. Can you explain what the farm meta is? We saw you use farms in 2268. You know, when Peace and I and our crew were there, we saw how you did it. What are the different ways to use them specifically?
I guess there's quite a few ways to use farms. The majority that I do with my farm is for filling rallies and garrisons. Because I want to kill off my farm troops before my main account, right? Because my main account doesn't have that much power. So I want to maximize, the deads from my farm accounts first before I start using my main account troops. And then also, as well, as you can see here too, right? We're carpeting the territory here, so we need farms to build flags. That's another way to use it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like we mentioned before, like getting doors and everything. But majority of the time, I use it to fill and kill troops, like as much as I can. Like as much troops I can kill off of farm accounts possible.
And I don't think
without draining.
Yeah. And I don't think people realize that, because you need. It's harder to kill your troops, or it's harder to fill structures and join rallies when you get later into Kingsland. You can't necessarily do that from your farm. So basically, what you're saying is you have to utilize your farm account. You have to utilize the troops on your farm account, especially in early zones, so you're not wasting the troops on your main. Correct?
Exactly. Because it is always easier to reinforce a structure with farms than to join a rally with a farm account, I think, right? Especially if there's multiple farm accounts, because you can always hide troops in like a city close by to this flag, for example, to reinforce. But if we're rallying this flag, it's really hard to control many farms at once to reinforce a rally, right? Because they can get sniped. It's just really difficult. But you're totally correct. In a KVK, we would like to try to kill off as many farm troops as possible before Kingsland. Especially, I think a lot of times it's like past 7 here. Like past fighting, it's generally when we kill off most of our farm troops and defending fortresses.
Okay, so people often ask about tips for making farms. What tips do you have for making farms versus for making farms for farming versus farms that you're filling in KVK? Do you do it differently? Do you run the tech differently? Do you run your formations? Maybe a couple of commanders you go get differently? How do you kind of distinguish, or do you just do them as the same? Like any account you're going to fill garrisons and rallies with, those are accounts you're going to specifically farm with. Is there any different way to do it?
I would say the difference I would do between a farm for just gathering resources, for example, and a farm for filling troops is the power, the technology, and the building power. So, for example, this is an older farm that I first built when I started the game. There's a lot of building technology, and there's also a lot of just technology power in general. And if I were just using this farm to gather resources, that's mostly wasted power to a farm account. So if I was building a farm account, I would keep the power as low as possible with the building technology. Because I know a lot of people, they have farms that's even like under 10 million power, just so they can migrate them very, very easily. Exactly. It's just one passport. I mean, if it gets burned, it's okay, because they have maybe 50 other farms. Because I know Yar, for example, he does have that. He has 50 farms. That's all under 10 million power.
So go into your research center and kind of explain how, if you want to keep your farm specifically for gathering resources to a minimum, when it comes to your tech on your academy here. And so we always say research. That's for Crystal Tech. But you're saying you really focus the econ tech, and you can keep the power really, really low because you're not building a bunch of troops on it. You're not increasing the power with the buildings. You can keep this, at about 10 million power, 12 million power, and you can get a lot of this econ tech done, right?
Exactly. You can go as far as you like, I think, on the economy technology here, and then just basically just kind of skip the military technology if you're purely building this for a gathering farm.
So distinguish the gathering farm accounts from your fighting farm accounts. When you start doing your fighting farm accounts, you want to push your tech to at least unlock T4 and then you've also got to push a lot of buildings. So you're going to push that power up to over 20 million, up into 30 million, depending on how many troops you have when you're doing a fighting farm, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So I personally, for me, for a fighting farm, I would unlock T4, and then I pretty much just skip everything afterward because like all this for me is kind of unnecessary for a filling farm. But one thing I do keep in mind is cartography, which I personally only get this level 4 because level 5 will add millions of power, which I think is completely unnecessary for 5% march speed. Because you have to max combat tactics and all the other ones level 10, which is just way too much power. So I always avoid that even on this. I mean, on this older farm, I did not avoid because, it was one of my first farms that I built.
But you're giving great tips, I think. Yeah,
exactly.
great tips for players to understand. If you have a farm filling, what we call them fighting farms, your cartography, you keep it level 4. You don't have to increase so much power to get it to level 5, and really for 5% march speed, you're just sending out, T1 siege to go farm and do all that stuff. And so that's what people have to understand. If you develop those fighting farms, you're going to run the power up if you continue to work all the military tech and you're upgrading all the buildings. And the next thing you know, you've got a 40 million power account that not only is harder to migrate, but it also puts more pressure on the kingdom you're going to, because all the power in the kingdom now in matchmaking is accounted for, right?
Exactly, because for example here, from level 5 to level 10, that's just over 1.5 million plus power just for that single research. So imagine having 3 of them. That's 4.5 million power minimum. That goes to your farm for just 5% march speed, which is I think is totally unnecessary, and it will cost you more passports to migrate.
Yes, great answer for that. Next question. How many farms should people have? Should a player have?
That's a good question. So, okay, for me, I think I have too many. But in general, I would say somewhere between 5 to 7. And the reason I say that is because I personally like to spread out my farm accounts over a few different logins. Because, for example, if I have too many farm accounts, it's too difficult to rotate through all the different farm accounts with just one device. Because I play farms on a couple devices, so I can fill quicker that way. And the big key for me is I avoid having too many farm accounts with my main accounts because I'm fighting on my main account. So obviously I cannot spend as much time on my if the login's the same, I can't spend as much time on those other farms. But 5 to 7 spread over a couple devices, for me, I think is the ideal setup. It'll give you enough accounts to gather resources. And if you average about 2, maybe 3 million troops per farm, it's actually quite a lot of troops that you can get in those accounts.
I will never forget being in that zone 6, and we're rallying forts, and you and I were we were joined at the hip because you were always giving me the buffing marches for the rallies I was running, so I'm always hitting you with Trajans and stuff. But I'll never forget it. In one particular time, you're like, hold on, Chad. Okay, the punching bag's over here. You've got that. Then somebody on voice is yelling at you to let them into another alliance. And then somebody else is yelling at you on your main to get back with the murder ball. And you literally had 3 different devices going at one time doing 3 different things. And that's what I think people have to understand. You can use your farms. And as you're saying, to separate out the logins, now you can be logged into 2 or 3 different farms on different devices pretty easily.
Exactly, because I just multitask along with it too, right? Because sometimes when I'm streaming, I have to hide markers, so I cannot see the markers on my main device. And for me, a trick is to actually use my farm accounts who's in the same coalition that I can see the markers on. So that way, there's another way I utilize having multiple devices.
That's a great answer. That's such a great answer.
I just try to utilize all these devices as much as possible.
Oh gosh, that's so good. Okay, next question. What power can farms be to be the most effective in not impacting overall power? So we're talking about we're not talking about the gathering farms, because you can keep those really, really low. but you're fighting
Yeah.
power farms. Like, where do you get like over 40 million and you're getting a little bit nervous? Like, okay, I'm starting to carry some weight and the kingdom's got to account for it. Like where do you think is a good mix there, and how many troops can you get on a farm at the ideal power?
I would definitely agree. Like when I get close to 40 million, I generally get quite cautious because I start to think they're starting to get a little bit too fat, in my personal opinion. I prefer fighting farms around 25 to 30 million power. Um, it that way. Let me see. Let me switch to my other device. Actually, I think this would be a better example.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a skinnier farm that I have. It's a much newer farm. It's in the 20 millions. It's also a much younger farm. But for me, this is kind of like the ideal range because this still has 2.3 million troops at 20 million power, and it's almost half the power of my previous farm, right? So if I have two of these farms, that's over 4 million troops versus one of my 40 million power farms.
Okay.
So I think this, to me, like 20, 25, 30, I think is the most ideal range without having too much power.
Okay. Perfect answer. Next question, I guess, for you. When you're investing in commanders, like do you do it specifically for your gathering farms, and then you add maybe some reinforcing commanders? Like, how do you what commanders do you make sure you have to have? Let me ask you that.
So for me, I'm always paranoid that my farm will get hit by a rogue player. So on all of them, I try to have at least one garrison, whether it's like Sun Tzu and YSS, or YSS and Hera, YSS YSG, in some sort of combination. And then I also have a speed march, which I use to build flags. And then I also have a gathering march for the gold pit, or any pits in general. But I also try to get some commanders close to level 60 for basically just reinforcing anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Because if you can get them to level 60, and just for context, if you're wanting to reinforce, getting your commanders to level 60 gives you the troop cap per march you can put on there. You can
Ideally,
see,
yes.
You can see
Yep.
Lohar right here. He's at level 51, and so
Yep.
if you click out of that, you can kind of see his troop count is 100. What is that? 195.
195. Yep.
Okay, so if he gets to level 60, he can get up to 200 or 200,000. But if you're sitting at like level 30 with your commander, you're only going to be able to send out like 140,000 troops. And so,
I think it's 193 according to this
oh
Matilda.
wow, there you go. Well, Matilda's also got a high troop cap, but there's a 40 level and 175. So sometimes when we're filling structures and forts and passes, and you're dumping in 200 and 250,000 troops, you got to be able to have higher level commanders that can get to the structure and bring a lot more troops. Correct?
That's correct. Yeah, as you can see, that's why this farm I haven't really used much, so it's kind of a work in progress. So that's why you can see there's a lot of commanders who are sub level 60 still. So that's why it's this one's a work in progress. But I thought it's a good one to show because I think it's on the way there.
Okay, so is there any specific troop type that you focus on? For each account, or do you just do all troops on all accounts? Like, do you have a Farmer Moogie Cav account or Farmer Moogie Infantry account to where like, hey, we're going to be filling this fort we're sticking to infantry for the next couple hours or the next day, or do you just basically do them all equal, all the same?
For me, just because I have too many farms, I just try to train them all equal, so I don't have to worry about like, oh, this farm has more of this troop, this farm has more of that troop. Just train them as evenly as possible. But if a KVK comes up where, for example, we need more infantry, then I'll train more infantry on every single farm account. I try to keep it even, so I don't have to like think too much about like, oh, which farm is which. Like, does this farm have more? Does this farm have less? Like. It just makes it a little easier to manage, I find, that way.
Well, also with that, so talking to your leadership will tell you like, hey, Gorgo is meta, right? We're going to run a bunch of infantry this upcoming KVK. And when you go train on your farms, because just like you have kingdom buffs going for pre-KVK and different events, that's the time to go train on your farms. And then you basically focus on what leadership tells you we're going to run a bunch of, right?
Exactly. Because I know, I think for this kingdom, they prefer more infantry for the garrison. So I think during pre-KVK, whenever I can, I trained a little bit more infantry where I have speed ups available.
And anybody knows you're in a kingdom with me. I want as many calves as you can get, as much as you can.
I'll gladly train more calves.
Okay, let's talk about armaments and equipment. Do you to farm fill? Obviously, to gather, you're going to do line formation, and you're trying to just pick up some good, gold gathering or gathering speed for your line formation. But also, do you do staggered formation when it comes to reinforcing? Like, how do you set that up?
So for me, on the reinforcing marches, I actually prefer just regular triple
line, just easy. Yep.
Yeah, because for me, triple line to 5% works anytime. So whether I'm joining a rally or if I'm marching somewhere to build a flag, I prefer just to have the 5% all the time. And because I also use my farms to kill barbs as much as possible. So it's just a general use. I think it's slightly better. But if there's a player where they only use the farm accounts to join rallies and nothing else, like I think it's also perfectly reasonable to use stagger formation.
Yeah, 15% march speed to the structure or the rally is always pretty good, and so I think people try to just do the best they can to get where they can get as fast as they can. So that's always something to keep in mind.
Yep. I mean, like I think even having triple line is better than having nothing. Like 5% is still better than nothing.
Yep. I would agree with that. Okay. Do you remember any particular stratagem? Now, if you get into Storm stratagems or if you get into King of All Britain's got stratagems, I don't know what KVK you're in right now that might have stratagems. You have tides in this one, but if you do anything, one heart, one mind is always a really good one for your fighting farms, right? Because you're giving the garrison or the rally captain more damage with one heart, one mind. But you also look to put the stratagems for either troop capacity or gathering speed or different things on your farms, correct?
Yeah, because depending on the KVK, like I think paying attention to what the stratagem offers can really benefit the farms, like you mentioned, right? If it gives like the garrison extra attack, like that's a very important stratagem to add.
And more importantly, it's also a way to really maximize your farming efforts, because that's part of the fun about being a KVK is that you can get your farms into zones and they can farm high level nodes, even though we have those now in Home Kingdom. And but at the same time, you want to use those stratagems anytime you get a chance.
Yeah, because even for this KVK, I mean, for example, right, like the one of them can reduce my healing costs. That's, I mean, right now there's no fighting, but like even that, like if a farm account doesn't have a lot of resources, something like that could help. Just to save a little bit of resources.
And what people don't understand, if you have a fighting farm and you're loading up, even though you're taking deads, you're also getting sev wounds when you're in garrisons or rallies.
Yeah, exactly. That's why for me, like I try to keep a couple 100 million resources on each farm account just to heal. Because I think when we played our KVK in 68, I think I had around 300-400 million resources of each.
And you went through them all?
I used most of it, yeah.
Well, speaking of the KVK we went through, is there any KVK memory where you felt that farms really made the difference in the KVK? Where, oh my gosh, if we as a kingdom collectively hadn't done what we did with our farms, there was no way we were going to win this KVK.
Okay, even though we lost the KVK, I think when we played together, that was, for me, like that was actually the most farm deads I ever gotten in a KVK. I think in total I got around 15 million.
15 million troops on all your farms?
Yeah, like I did around 15 million. Because we rallied their fort so many times. Remember like the fort wall that they had?
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, now it's good that they add in this. You can see like how much your kingdom has used. I think it's a nice little feature they has. But yeah, like 15 million was my max.
And
That for me, that was very memorable because I was quite proud. Like, wow, 15 million. That's a record for me.
that is a 15 million. What people don't understand, 15 million, the amount of power 15 million is for farms is that pushes up over 60, 70 million power that you were basically able to peel off 60 million power from your collective 5 or 6 farms. And people just have to understand that is like crazy to do, and that's why the farming meta. And this is not. I think this is kind of a good PSA for people to understand. It's guys, this isn't for B seeds and C seeds. It's for A seeds. It's for Imperiums, the biggest Imperiums in the game. You'll see farms all over the place. And kingdoms like 1093, their farms they have thousands of accounts. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, because I think like on some of my other farm accounts, there's a lot more deads too. Like I mean, these ones are much younger and newer, so I haven't done many deads. But I try to spread out the deads on the farm accounts, so I don't drain any of the particular farms too much because it's also a little bit difficult to regain speed ups sometimes on farm accounts.
Yeah.
So I try to like keep it pretty even as much as possible. I mean, it's really nice that they added the statistics so you can keep track of your speed ups. Yeah, just I that's kind of my rule. I try not to drain my farms completely.
Okay, so next couple more, and we'll let you go. Is there ever a time farms can't be used in KVK? Like, at what point do you just wait on the call from your leadership? Like, guys, no more farm filling. Everybody go in with mains. We need to drop power. We need to start exhausting mains, or we need to keep. Like, at what point in time do you generally see that happen?
I would say definitely Kingsland, right? As much as possible, right? Because it's limited space in Kingsland, and you might not be able to teleport farms into Kingsland that easily. Unless there is space, I would say that's the main time I think where farms I think is a little bit less useful in terms of filling.
So, and I think that's one of those things. Some of the questions we get into here are questions like you got to ask your leadership, and they'll kind of help you with your farms. And I've been a part of kingdoms that are they're just not. They don't have a whole lot of farms. Not it's higher level players. They don't do a whole lot of farms. And then I've been a part of kingdoms that really rely on farms, and the value of that with those kingdoms, because the leadership's all a part of it. Use your farms. Here's the zones you're using their farms. Here's the zones. Everybody put your farms away. We're all going in with mains. This is what you need to drop your power in your mains. And so you always got to kind of rely on leadership as well. Correct?
Yeah, like rely on them to let us know like when is the right time to use them. Obviously, if they want us to kill our main troops, like I'll definitely kill our main troops whenever they want. But I just like to have it just in case my farm troops.
Yes.
Just like to have a lot just in case.
Okay. Next question: Do you think with more of these One Alliance kingdoms that we're seeing, that farms are going to continue to be more and more important? And if so, why?
I think for One Alliance kingdom, especially in general, because I think farms are also very good at holding territory. For example, this past here, right? Just using our farms to hold territory spots and everything. That I think is actually very useful. Using them, I think, in a way where to help benefit. I think territory building. Mm-hmm. I think because with sometimes with a lack of players, you kind of need a lot of farms to help build.
And it's
carpeting its own.
Yeah, and long gone are the days of 4 big alliances or 3 big active alliances in a kingdom. It's just mainly 1 and 2 alliance of kingdoms now, especially at the A seed level. But I think A seed and higher, I should say. But I think what you're saying is, and I'll never forget being in a zone, and we literally had to have people put their farms in the particular, I don't want to say choke point, but the area we were trying to make sure we were going to be at for a few days. And like you say, on a pass or something, because if you're going to teleport out, well, we got to get a farm. If nobody's there to take your spot, we got to get a farm there so a node doesn't pop up and we're stuck. And a node,
exactly,
because a node can mess up like 4 teleport spots.
Exactly. Like it just sometimes it's so frustrating when you teleport out and then no just spawn instantly. You go, oh my god! Like now, like you have to wait at least like an hour plus to clear it.
Well, the overall, it is a farm meta. It started becoming that way a couple of years ago. You're one of the best at it, and having a player like yourself who runs multiple accounts can do multiple things. And this is where I guess last question for you is that, what's your charge to some of these players that, hey, I'm a younger player. I've only got 70 million power. I can only run 2 or 3 marches in the field. What's your charge to them that, hey, you can utilize farms to really help your kingdom and you become a valuable player, not just a valuable account for your main?
I think I would say even just like using the farms to get resources for your main account so you can continue fighting. I think that's probably the one of the most important thing, right? Just resources so you can keep fighting as long as possible. And then as you build your account further where you have more speed ups, then you can start training more troops to further develop it. Because the perfect example for me is like this account, right? Because it takes time to build a farm into a fighting farm, right? Like it doesn't happen overnight. Like this account is 700 days old, but I do not play as much because it's attached to my main account. Just getting the resources I think is the big thing, right? So I don't have to rely on other people like, oh, I need resources to keep fighting. Like, can someone send me resources? Like, I think just having that in my bag ready to go for me like takes the headache out of other people of sending you resources, for example, in the middle of Kingsland.
Yeah, you never want to stop fighting because you're out of RSS and having to beg for RSS from friends and other people in the kingdom. So, the three biggest things are resource gathering, especially in off season, and being able to give that to your main. Also, a fighting farm that's able to ramp up the troops to really help out some of the fronts you're on, and then having the accounts to do multiple things, and especially for people in leadership. Where you have to have active leaders with farms and a bunch of different shells, because you and I are talking about 1 alliance and 2 alliance kingdoms. Well, you build in KVK with about anywhere from 6 to 12 alliances sometimes, and you have to have accounts to fill structures, to let people in the door, to drop flags, and to do all those things. And that is so much more important sometimes than just a good field fighter that's all they do. They don't even have any farms, right?
Yeah, because you always need territory in order to fight, right? So you kind of need certain accounts to be building.
Well, Only Farmer, you're awesome, and you're so nice and polite, and you bring such a fun, positive environment on your streams. You can catch her. I'm gonna have her link in the Discord. Go subscribe to her. She's always streaming fights. She's always spectating KVKs and having a good time with it. And you won't meet a nicer person in the game, and that's why we've always kind of stayed in touch. And she has always been very, very sweet to all of us. And Farmer, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you, and keep up the good work. I mean, the game's a lot of fun right now. It's given us a lot of content, a lot of commanders, a lot of quality of life stuff, and it's a good time to not only play, but also in your case, to do videos and to stream, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, thank you so much for having me on this. By the way, it's definitely always a pleasure to be in your videos and in your streams. I had so much fun.
And I will also link your Discord in the description, because what's going to happen is that I'm immediately going to be asked questions about farming, and I want to make sure and reference your Discord, or just about the game in general. I want to be able to reference your Discord so people can go in there, and you're always available. You're very active in your Discord, and it's always a lot of fun. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. We're kind of making you the expert when it comes to this stuff on the farm meta, because that's what makes or breaks KVKs, and that's so important to this game, and you can become a high impact player. And that's why we want to give you, like I said, I'm not the expert, so I'm going to go get the expert that knows how to do this stuff. And thank you for your time so much.
Thank you again so much for having me.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Moogie, you're great.